continues the last episode. After the Tang Dynasty collapsing, it was not until 960 CE when Zhao Kuang-yin launched the Chenqiao Mutiny and founded the Northern Song Dynasty, and finally reunified the country by 979 CE, that history officially entered the era of the Song Dynasty. What methods did Zhao Kuang-yin use to permanently resolve the millennia-old problem of rebellious generals? In the evolution of China's unified system, the Song Dynasty's key role was to refine measures specifically designed to prevent internal rebellion. Zhao Kuang-yin clearly understood the fundamental flaw that caused the collapse of the Tang and the chaos of the five dynasties. Whenever a military commander held military, financial, and administrative power simultaneously, rebellion was inevitable. Therefore, he established a series of comprehensive policies to prevent internal disorder, summarized in 8 characters: value literature, suppress military, strengthen the trunk, weaken the branches. The underlying logic was strictly preventative. Since chaos was caused by generals, the military class must be firmly constrained, and all power must be returned to the central government. 1. The first step began with releasing military power over a cup of wine. Using a peaceful approach of granting wealth and high status, he retrieved the military authority of founding generals. Without shedding a drop of blood, he resolved the problem of powerful armies threatening the court. More importantly, he divided military power into 3 separate functions: deployment, command, and battlefield leadership, assigning each to different officials, completely cutting off the possibility of one person controlling the entire military and preventing rebellion. Additionally, the garrison rotation system was implemented. Troops were frequently moved to different locations, but their commanders did not accompany them. This created a situation where soldiers did not know their generals, and generals did not know their soldiers. Commanders could not build personal power bases, eliminating the risk of the army becoming a private weapon. 2. The second step was strengthening central authority and weakening local power. All military, financial, and administrative powers were recalled from the provinces to the court. Local governments were left only with the authority to implement basic tasks, with no right to make independent decisions. Regional governors were all civil officials, frequently transferred with short terms to prevent them from establishing influence. Transport commissioners were appointed to manage taxation. All revenue had to be submitted to the central government, with no funds retained locally. Furthermore, half of the elite army was stationed in the capital to protect the center, while the other half was deployed at key points across the country to maintain control, completely eradicating the seeds of separatism. 3. The third step was developing the imperial examination system to its peak in ancient times. Innovations included blind grading and transcription of exam papers to completely eliminate cheating and ensure equal opportunities for the poor. The scale of recruitment was expanded, with 10 times as many graduates as during the Tang. In its 167-year history, the Song produced over 60,000 examination graduates. Zhao Kuang-yin also established the policy of governing the nation together with Confucian scholars, elevating the status of civil officials to an unprecedented level and permanently ending the threat of military interference in governance. Coupled with an open economic policy and encouragement of foreign trade, the Song became the dynasty with the most developed commercial economy in ancient Chinese history, with trade volume and urbanization levels reaching the highest in the world at that time. However, a major question remains: why did the Song dynasty, possessing immense resources, constantly suffer from attacks, forced to sue for peace and endure humiliation? Why could it not defeat even smaller powers, such as Western Jia or Liao, and ultimately suffer the tragedy of losing its capital twice? Many attribute this to a lack of horses, the loss of the 16 prefectures of Yanyun, or incompetent emperors, but these are only surface-level explanations. The core reason is that the Song pushed its policies of preventing internal rebellion to an extreme, far beyond what was necessary. While it sealed off all loopholes for domestic disorder, it also severely weakened the military's flexibility and capability in external defense. The policy of valuing literature and suppressing military was taken to the extreme. Military officers were not only excluded from military decision-making bodies, but also stripped of tactical command authority on the battlefield. This was the system of controlling the army from afar. Even when deployed, generals had to fight strictly according to pre-drawn battle plans sent from the palace, unable to adapt to changes on the ground. How could they possibly win battles under such constraints? Combined with the system where soldiers did not know their generals, the army lacked cohesion and coordination. Soldiers and commanders distrusted each other, and in battle, everyone looked out for themselves. Even when victories were achieved, the result was often signing unequal treaties and paying indemnities to buy peace. The highly centralized system, with overlapping layers of control, created a vicious cycle of three excesses: excess officials, excess troops, and excess expenditure, dragging the state finances into collapse. To prevent officials from abusing power, one position was split among multiple people, causing the number of officials to increase fivefold. Work became stagnant and inefficient. To prevent civil unrest, the Song recruited all the poor and unemployed into the army. Military spending often accounted for 80% of state revenue, becoming a massive burden. Added to this were indemnities paid to Liao, Western Xia, and Jin, plus the extravagant spending of the imperial family. The court's finances collapsed completely. Taxes were increased on the population, triggering numerous uprisings and weakening the dynasty's foundation from within. The thorough implementation of strengthening the trunk and weakening the branches also left local governments completely defenseless. Elite troops were all concentrated at the center, leaving only weak units in the regions incapable of defense. All revenue went to the capital, leaving no funds locally to prepare for war. Governors were transferred every 3 years and closely monitored by assistant officials, making it impossible for them to act independently, even in emergencies. The Song dynasty resembled a colossus with excellent equipment but bound hands and feet. It possessed immense power but lacked the flexibility to respond to external threats, remaining in a passive state throughout. Eventually, the tragedy of losing the country twice occurred. During the Jingkong incident, the Jin army marched straight into the capital and captured emperors Huizong and Qinzong, ending the northern Song. The southern Song, though surviving for a while longer in the south, never corrected the core flaw in its system, prioritizing the prevention of internal rebellion over resisting foreign invasion. It even executed the great general Yue just to retrieve military power, effectively dismantling its own defenses. Finally, after the tragic Battle of Yamen, the Song dynasty fell completely to the advancing Mongol armies. The Yuan Dynasty, which conquered the southern Song, was the first unified dynasty in Chinese history, established by an ethnic minority. It also marked the era with the largest territorial extent in ancient history. Its territory spanned from the north to the south, and for the first time brought border regions such as Tibet, Yunnan, and the steppes of the north under direct central administration. It lasted for 97 years and was ruled by 11 emperors. In the evolution of China's unified system, the Yuan dynasty's core contribution was rebuilding the system's structural framework to govern an unprecedentedly vast territory. They faced a landmass never seen before in history, where previous governance models, the commanderies and counties of the Qin and Han, or the circuits and prefectures of the Tang and Song, were no longer suitable. Administrative efficiency was extremely low, and some regions were barely governed at all. Consequently, the Yuan directly rebuilt the basic structure of the system and introduced a great institutional design, the province system, a system still in use today. Province was short for executive secretariat, essentially not an independent local government, but a branch office of the central government's highest administrative body, the Zhongshu Sheng, dispatched to manage local affairs. This system granted sufficient authority to local governments to effectively solve problems in vast regions while remaining under absolute central control, leaving no room for the development of separatist forces. Ultimately, the Yuan established a 5-level administrative system: central government, province, circuit, prefecture, sub-prefecture, county. This entirely new structure solved the millennia-old dilemma faced by previous dynasties, where granting autonomy led to division, while centralization led to inefficiency. In particular, the Yuan adopted the principle of dividing administrative boundaries so that regions were geographically interlocked. For example, part of Sichuan's land was placed under Shanxi's jurisdiction, and part of Hubei under Henan. This completely eliminated natural geographic advantages that could be used for secession, preventing the risk of division at the root. This provincial structure became the foundation for local governance in China for centuries to come. To this day, we still apply the core logic of this system. Beyond this, the province system had great historical significance. It brought Yunnan, Tibet, Mongolia, and other border regions under direct central administration for the first time, laying the foundation for modern China's territorial map and ensuring these regions became an inseparable part of China thereafter. Besides the province system, the Yuan built the most comprehensive postal relay system of ancient times, opening trade routes across the Eurasian continent. This allowed Chinese silk and porcelain to be shipped directly to Europe, while bringing European goods and culture into China. Additionally, the Yuan re-engineered and rerouted the Grand Canal to connect the capital with the south, strengthening the north-south economic lifeline. It also promoted the development of maritime trade to new heights, driving deep economic and cultural integration between regions. However, the Yuan's institutions had inherent defects, like a genetic disease present since birth, that eventually dragged the whole dynasty down. 1. The first defect: implementation of discriminatory governance policies based on ethnicity. The Mongol nobility and Samoan officials held all key power positions, while the Han and other ethnic groups faced restrictions in every aspect: career opportunities, legal equality, and tax obligations. The path to advancement for common people was severely narrowed. Throughout its reign, the Yuan never built a consensus regarding its rule across the whole population, breaking the core principle of all unified dynasties, that the emperor is the ruler of all people. The Han and other ethnic groups always viewed Mongol rule as foreign occupation rather than legitimate governance. They held no loyalty, making a weak governing foundation even more fragile. 2. The second defect: failure to establish a stable succession system. The Yuan followed the steppe tradition of elective leadership by council, while Chinese political culture adhered to the rule of primogeniture. The conflict between these two systems resulted in 9 emperors changing power within just 38 years, with almost every transfer of power accompanied by bloody coups or civil wars. Internal struggles not only depleted national strength, but also caused chaos in central institutions, leading to total loss of control over local governance, rampant corruption, heavy taxation, and extreme hardship for the people. 3. The third defect: failure to resolve the conflict between nomadic and agricultural governance logic. The Yuan rulers continued to apply the crude, indirect methods of the steppe empire to govern China's agricultural society, which was completely incompatible with the needs of local administration. Mongol nobles frantically seized land and converted farmland into pastures, destroying agricultural production. They also adopted a tax farming system, allowing local officials and landlords to exploit the people without restraint. Land annexation and the tax burden worsened daily, pushing the population to the brink of survival. These 3 defects formed a vicious cycle, leaving the Yuan's governance foundation riddled with cracks from the start. It took only a small spark to trigger total collapse. The Red Turban Rebellion erupted, quickly spreading across the country and shattering the ruling structure. The fall of the Yuan became inevitable.